The wind screamed through the skeletal remains of the rusted fences surrounding the abandoned Detroit K-9 training center, a mournful cry that echoed the ghosts of forgotten warriors. A weathered sign clung desperately to the entrance, its peeling letters whispering a final epitaph: Detroit K-9 Unit Training Center, closed. The cracked concrete yard stretched out like a battlefield, choked with weeds and lined with rows of decaying kennels, each a prison for dogs cast aside like spent ammunition. Their barks pierced the frigid air, some wild with defiance, others trembling with despair. But one dog lay silent in the deepest, darkest corner, where shadows swallowed hope. Titan. A towering German shepherd, sprawled motionless in his cage, his amber eyes hollowed by a past too heavy to bear. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He simply stared, waiting, watching, a sentinel of secrets no one dared to unearth. Frank, the grizzled shelter manager, stood before Titan's kennel, his shoulders sagging under the weight of years. "This one's done for," he rasped to a young worker, voice thick with resignation. "Once a king among dogs, now just a shell. Useless." The worker glanced at Titan, but those golden eyes didn't flicker. Then, a low rumble sliced through the stillness, an engine's growl. A black pickup truck rolled to a halt at the gate, and out stepped Tyler Grayson. His stride was deliberate, a quiet storm wrapped in a battered leather jacket, broad shoulders bearing the scars of battles fought far from this forsaken place. As he passed the kennels, the dogs erupted, barking, lunging, pleading for salvation. But when he reached Titan's cage, the chaos faded. Their gazes collided. Time fractured. Titan didn't rise, didn't cower, didn't beg. In those unyielding amber depths, Tyler saw something raw, not defeat, not surrender, but a flicker of a fire long buried, a soul waiting to be reclaimed. "What's his story?" Tyler's voice was steady, a blade cutting through the din. Frank snorted a dry, bitter sound. "Titan? Forget it, man. That dog's a lost cause. Won't listen, won't move, just sits there, waiting for a ghost that'll never show." But Tyler didn't break eye contact. He knelt, inches from the cold steel bars, close enough to feel the weight of Titan's silence. The dog's ears twitched, a spark. A whisper of life. Memory? Recognition? Tyler couldn't name it, but he felt it, a pull, a thread tying their fates. His hand grazed the bars. Titan didn't flinch, but something shifted in his stare, an ember reigniting, a shadow of the warrior he'd once been. Tyler knew that look. He'd seen it in his reflection, in the mirror of a man who'd survived hell and come back hollow. They weren't so different. "I'm taking him," Tyler declared, his tone leaving no room for doubt. Frank's jaw dropped. "You're kidding, right?" Tyler pulled crumpled bills from his wallet. "How much?" Frank shook his head, shoving a worn leash into Tyler's hand. $200. "Your funeral, not mine." The kennel door creaked open, and Titan rose, not out of obedience, but with purpose. As they walked to the truck, the other dogs howled their desperate chorus, but Titan moved in silence, head high, steps measured. He was leaving this graveyard, but freedom wasn't his yet. Not until he remembered what he'd lost. The truck roared into the night, Titan perched in the passenger seat, his gaze piercing the blackened horizon. He didn't watch the road. He didn't turn to Tyler. He looked beyond, into a past that clawed its way back, a story begging to be told. The wind shrieked through the cracked window, carrying the echoes of abandoned souls. And in the stillness between them, a question burned: what had broken Titan, and what would it take to bring him back? The black pickup truck rolled down a lonely road, the city lights of Detroit fading in the distance. Inside, Tyler drove in silence, glancing at the dog sitting beside him. Titan didn't move, didn't pant, didn't fidget like a normal dog would. He just sat there, staring out the window, his golden brown eyes fixed on something beyond the darkness. He was calm, but not relaxed. Alert. Watching. Waiting. Tyler tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, his mind racing. He had owned dogs before. Worked with them in the military. But Titan was different. There was no fear in him, no curiosity. Just silence. A soldier who had lost his war but not his discipline. "You always this quiet?" Tyler muttered, but Titan didn't react. No tail wag. No ear twitch. Nothing. As they neared the outskirts of town, the landscape changed. The streets became empty, and the houses became more spread apart. Soon, they reached a small, isolated house at the edge of the woods. It was nothing fancy, just a single-story home with an old barn in the back, a faded porch, and a rusted wind chime that swayed in the cold night air. Tyler killed the engine. "All right, buddy. Home sweet home." He opened the door, stepping out into the crisp air. Titan sat still for a moment, then, without hesitation, jumped down from the truck. Not like a house pet, but like a trained soldier dismounting a vehicle. Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. You've done that before." Titan didn't acknowledge him. His nose flared slightly as he scanned the area, head tilting, ears pricked. A perimeter check. Tyler watched, intrigued. He didn't know what had happened to this dog, but one thing was clear: he hadn't forgotten everything. Tyler walked up to the porch and pushed open the door. The inside was simple: a leather couch, a wooden coffee table, and a kitchen in the back. On the far side of the room, an old fireplace remained dark and untouched. There were no pictures on the walls, no decorations, just the bare essentials, as if the house had never truly been lived in. Titan stepped inside cautiously. He didn't sniff around like a normal dog exploring a new place. Instead, he moved slowly, calculating, and analyzing. His paws barely made a sound on the wooden floor. "You're not like the others, are you?" Tyler muttered as he tossed his keys onto the table. Titan circled the room once, then did something that made Tyler freeze. Instead of settling near the couch or sniffing around the kitchen, Titan walked directly to the corner of the room and sat facing the front door. Tyler frowned. "What the hell are you doing?" Titan didn't respond. His body was still, ears perked, gaze locked on the entrance. A guard position. Tyler exhaled slowly, rubbing his jaw. Something was off. He had seen K9 dogs trained to guard, but Titan wasn't just sitting there because he had been told to. He was waiting for something, for someone. Shaking his head, Tyler grabbed a blanket from the couch and tossed it onto the floor. "You can sleep here," he said. "Not sure what you're used to, but that's the best I got for now." Titan didn't move. "Suit yourself." Tyler sighed and headed to his bedroom, shutting the door behind him. But as he lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, sleep didn't come easily. Something about that dog gnawed at him. He wasn't broken. He wasn't lost. He was waiting. Hours passed. The house remained silent except for the occasional creak of wood shifting in the cold. Then, a sound. Tyler's eyes snapped open. It was faint. Barely a whisper. A low growl. His hand instinctively reached for the pistol on his nightstand as he sat up, listening. The growling came from the living room. "Titan." Slowly, Tyler pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway. The dim glow of the moonlight spilled through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. Titan was still sitting in the exact same spot, facing the door, his body rigid. His growl was almost inaudible, but Tyler recognized it: not fear. Not aggression. Warning. Tyler's pulse quickened. He moved carefully toward the front window, peering through the glass. Nothing. Just the empty yard and the dark tree line beyond. But Titan kept growling, and then, Tyler saw it, a figure. A dark silhouette standing just beyond the trees. Motionless. Watching. Tyler's grip tightened on the pistol. Titan's growl deepened. Whoever it was, they weren't lost. They weren't wandering, they were waiting too. Just like Titan, the air outside was deathly still. Tyler stood frozen near the window, his grip firm around the pistol, eyes locked on the dark silhouette just beyond the tree line. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound, just standing there. Watching. Titan remained at the door, his body tense, a low growl rumbling from his throat. It wasn't fear. It wasn't aggression. It was a warning. Tyler narrowed his eyes, adrenaline kicking in. His instincts screamed that whoever was out there wasn't just some random stranger. This was intentional. He took a slow step back, keeping his voice low. "Stay here," he muttered to Titan. Titan didn't move, but his growl softened, his way of acknowledging the command. Tyler reached for the light switch. Darkness was his advantage. He had learned that a long time ago. The second he flipped the lights on, he'd be the one exposed, not whoever was out there. He moved to the door, unlocked it slowly, and stepped outside, his footsteps silent against the porch wood. The cold night air pressed against his skin as he scanned the tree lean, every nerve in his body on high alert. The figure was gone. Tyler's jaw tightened. Not good. His eyes darted along the shadows, looking for any sign of movement. He knew how this worked. Watching was a tactic. A test. The real move would come next. Behind him, inside the house, Titan was still sitting, ears perked, completely focused on the doorway. Tyler glanced back at him, then back to the trees. Nothing, but he could feel it. The weight of being hunted. They weren't alone. A branch snapped in the distance. Tyler raised his pistol instantly, aiming toward the sound. His finger hovered over the trigger, waiting. Listening, the silence stretched, then, another noise, not from the trees, but from behind him, inside the house. Tyler turned sharply, pulse spiking. Titan was still sitting by the door, but his growl had stopped. He wasn't looking at the tree lean anymore, he was looking toward the back of the house. Tyler's stomach twisted. Shit, the trees had been a distraction. Someone was already inside, moving fast. Tyler slipped back through the door, silent and controlled. He didn't turn the lights on. If someone was inside, they were expecting him to panic, to stumble in blindly. Instead, he did what he had been trained to do. He listened. The house was still, but not empty. A floorboard creaked near the kitchen. Tyler shifted, staying close to the wall. His breathing was slow, steady. He raised his pistol, finger on the trigger, every muscle coiled, ready. Then, Titan moved. It was subtle. No bark. No growl. Just a silent shift in position, his body lowering into a precise stance. Muscles tightening. He had stopped watching and started waiting for the intruder to make the next move. Tyler's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, then, a shadow shifted, the glint of metal. A knife. Tyler reacted instantly. Gun up. Step forward, don't move. A sharp breath from the dark. A pause. Then, a voice, low, controlled, but unmistakably surprised. Grayson. Tyler's grip tightened. Whoever this was, they knew him. Step out where I can see you, Tyler ordered. A slow movement, and then, a man emerged from the darkness, tall, dressed in black. Military stance. A scar ran along his jawline, and his hands were raised slightly. But his eyes were sharp, assessing the situation. Titan didn't lunge, didn't bark, he just watched. Tyler's voice was ice. Who the hell are you? The man smirked, stepping closer, his hand brushing Titan's flank as he passed, too quick to notice the tiny tracking chip he pressed into the dog's fur. You don't remember me, he said, voice cold. But Titan does. Tyler's stomach clenched. What the hell did that mean? The man glanced at the dog, his smirk fading just slightly. And that's a problem. Tyler didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger, the gunshot ripped through the silence, but the intruder was fast. He dropped low, twisting his body just as Tyler pulled the trigger, the bullet missing by inches and slamming into the wooden wall behind him. In the same motion, the man kicked the dining chair between them, knocking it over and buying himself a second to retreat into the shadows of the kitchen. Tyler moved instantly, shifting sideways, keeping his pistol up. His mind was racing. This guy wasn't just some thug, his movements were trained. Military precision. Titan remained in position, not attacking yet, but waiting, calculating. Come out, Tyler called, voice steady, controlled. You're not walking out of here unless I say so. A deep chuckle echoed from the dark corner of the kitchen. You haven't changed, Grayson. Tyler's jaw clenched. That voice. Something about it felt familiar, but his mind couldn't place it. Who the hell are you? A pause. Then, the man stepped forward, into the dim glow of the moonlight filtering through the window. Finally, Tyler got a good look at him. Late 30s. Lean but built like a soldier. Tactical gear. A thin scar ran from his jawline to his temple. But it was the eyes that caught Tyler's attention. Cold. Unwavering. Calculating. And then, it clicked. Tyler's blood ran cold. No. That's not possible. The man smirked. Took you long enough. Logan Cross. A name Tyler had buried 3 years ago. A name that should have been dead. Tyler's grip on his pistol tightened. Cross was dead. He had seen the explosion. So how the hell was he standing in his kitchen? You're supposed to be in a grave, Tyler said coldly. Cross tilted his head slightly, as if amused. Yeah, well. Turns out the people you work for aren't always honest. Tyler's stomach twisted. What the hell was he talking about? Then Cross's eyes flickered toward Titan. Your dog remembers me, he said quietly. And that's a problem. Titan let out a low, guttural growl. Tyler immediately pieced it together. Titan and Cross knew each other. Which meant Titan wasn't just some random K9. He had been on that mission too. The same mission where Cross was presumed dead. And if Titan was here, then that meant there was something about that mission that someone wanted to be erased. Tyler took a slow step forward, keeping his gun steady. Why are you here? Cross's smirk faded slightly. I came to give you a warning, Cross said, his voice low, almost strained. His sharp eyes darted to the window, then back to Tyler. You and that dog? You're sitting on a time bomb. Blackhawk's got my sister, Grayson. They'll kill her if I don't deliver you. I didn't want this, I gave you the heads up so you could run. But they're here now. Sunrise is all you've got left. Tyler didn't flinch. Who sent you? Cross sighed, shaking his head. I'm not here to kill you. Grayson. If I was, you'd already be dead. Titan took a step forward, teeth bared. Cross glanced at the dog, then back to Tyler. I should have just let them take him back. Tyler's eyes narrowed. Them? Cross exhaled. Then, with an almost regretful look, he muttered, Blackhawk Security. A single moment of pure silence followed, then, Tyler's expression darkened. His heartbeat slammed against his ribs. Blackhawk Security. The name hit him like a bullet. They were a covert private military organization, known for handling dirty jobs no one else wanted to touch. Black Ops. Assassinations. Operations that never made it onto official records. And if they wanted Titan back? That meant Titan had seen something he wasn't supposed to. Tyler's muscles tensed. How long do we have? Cross didn't hesitate. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Outside, the distant hum of engines rumbled in the night. They were already coming. Tyler and Cross locked eyes. For the first time, Titan barked sharply, a command, a warning. It was time to move. Tyler's grip on his pistol tightened as the low rumble of engines grew closer. Cross stood motionless, his expression unreadable, but there was no time for questions. Tyler knew one thing: if Blackhawk Security was coming, staying here meant death. He turned sharply and grabbed a duffel bag from under the couch, tossing in extra ammo, cash, and a burner phone. Titan stayed by the door, ears perked, his body tense. He sensed the danger just as much as Tyler did. Cross watched, arms crossed, before finally speaking. We need to move. Now. Tyler shot him a glare. I still don't trust you, Cross smirked slightly. Good. You shouldn't. But there was no time to argue. The deep rumble of SUVs rolling down the dirt road sent a pulse of urgency through Tyler's veins. He moved to the back door and gestured for Titan to follow. The dog didn't hesitate, stepping into the darkness without a sound. Cross followed, but Tyler kept his gun close, his finger hovering near the trigger. If this was a setup, he wouldn't go down without a fight. They slipped out into the night, the cold air pressing against their skin. Tyler led them toward the tree line, his mind racing. The forest behind his house stretched for miles. If they could disappear into it before Blackhawk arrived, they had a chance. But Titan suddenly stopped, his body rigid, nose flaring. Tyler knew that look. They weren't alone. Tyler's eyes flicked to Titan, catching a faint glint under the dog's collar, a tracker, buried in his fur. Damn it, he muttered, yanking it free and crushing it under his boot. Too late. Blackhawk was already here, Cross cursed under his breath. They're faster than I thought. The faint click of a safety being released sent a chill down Tyler's spine. He barely had time to react before the first shot rang out. He grabbed Cross and shoved him behind a tree as a bullet splintered the bark beside them. Titan darted forward, silent and deadly, circling the area to flank the attackers. Tyler crouched, his breath steady, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Shadows moved between the trees. 3, maybe 4 men. Blackhawk's elite. This wasn't a standard retrieval mission. They weren't here to capture Titan. They were here to eliminate them all. Cross pulled his pistol, eyes sharp. We can't outrun them. Tyler gritted his teeth. Then we fight. Another shot cracked through the night. Titan lunged from the shadows, slamming into the nearest attacker before the man could react. A scream, a struggle, and then silence. Tyler aimed, firing twice, hitting another target. Cross moved with lethal precision, taking down a third. But more were coming. Headlights flashed through the trees as more vehicles approached. Tyler knew this was a losing battle. We need a way out. Cross wiped blood from his face, panting. There's an old service tunnel under the ridge. It leads to the highway. Tyler hesitated. Trusting Cross was a risk. But staying here meant certain death. He whistled sharply, and Titan instantly returned to his side, his golden eyes fierce and ready. Tyler exhaled, gripping his gun tighter. Lead the way. But if this is a trap, I swear. Cross didn't wait to hear the rest. He was already moving. Tyler followed, Titan at his side, as they disappeared into the night, with Blackhawk's hunters closing in behind them. Tyler ran through the dense forest, his breath steady but his mind racing. Cross led the way, moving quickly but with purpose, his knowledge of the terrain unsettling. Titan stayed close to Tyler's side, his ears twitching at every distant sound, his body tense, ready to strike. Behind them, the shouts of Blackhawk operatives echoed through the trees, followed by the sharp crack of gunfire. Bullets tore through the branches, splintering wood and kicking up dirt. Tyler ducked low, pushing forward, his grip tight on his pistol. That tunnel better be real, he growled. Cross didn't look back. It is. Just keep moving. They weaved through the thick underbrush, the darkness making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Tyler's instincts screamed that this was a trap, that Cross was leading them straight into Blackhawk's hands. But he didn't have a choice. He could hear the engines revving in the distance, more backup arriving. They were being hunted, and time was running out. Suddenly, Cross skidded to a stop near a rocky slope covered in vines. He reached down, and yanked hard on what looked like an old steel hatch buried beneath leaves and debris. The metal groaned as it opened, revealing a dark tunnel beneath. In, now, he snapped. Tyler hesitated for half a second before pushing Titan inside first, then dropping down after him. Cross followed, pulling the hatch shut just as the sound of boots pounding against the ground grew dangerously close. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and rust, the air thick and stale. Tyler turned on a small flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness. "Where does this lead?" he asked. Cross wiped the sweat from his brow. "Outskirts of town. If we make it, we can disappear before they realize we're gone." Tyler wasn't convinced. "And then what?" "They won't stop coming." Cross met his gaze. "That's why we don't run. We take the fight to them." Tyler exhaled slowly. He didn't trust Cross, not fully, but he knew one thing: Titan was the key to something bigger. And whatever Blackhawk was trying to hide, it was worth killing for. He crouched low, listening as muffled voices echoed above them. The soldiers were searching, but they hadn't found the tunnel. Not yet. Tyler motioned for Titan to stay close, then nodded at Cross. "Let's move." They disappeared into the darkness, knowing that the real fight had only just begun. Tyler ran through the dense forest, his breath steady but his mind racing. Cross led the way, moving quickly but with purpose, his knowledge of the terrain unsettling. Titan stayed close to Tyler's side, his ears twitching at every distant sound. His body tense, ready to strike. Behind them, the shouts of Blackhawk operatives echoed through the trees, followed by the sharp crack of gunfire. Bullets tore through the branches, splintering wood and kicking up dirt. Tyler ducked low, pushing forward, his grip tight on his pistol. "That tunnel better be real," he growled. Cross didn't look back. "It is. Just keep moving." They weaved through the thick underbrush, the darkness making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Tyler's instincts screamed that this was a trap, that Cross was leading them straight into Blackhawk's hands. But he didn't have a choice. He could hear the engines revving in the distance, more backup arriving. They were being hunted, and time was running out. Suddenly, Cross skidded to a stop near a rocky slope covered in vines. He reached down and yanked hard on what looked like an old steel hatch buried beneath leaves and debris. The metal groaned as it opened, revealing a dark tunnel beneath. "In, now!" he snapped. Tyler hesitated for half a second before pushing Titan inside first, then dropping down after him. Cross followed, pulling the hatch shut just as the sound of boots pounding against the ground grew dangerously close. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and rust, the air thick and stale. Tyler turned on a small flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness. "Where does this lead?" he asked. Cross wiped the sweat from his brow. "Outskirts of town. If we make it, we can disappear before they realize we're gone." Tyler wasn't convinced. "And then what?" "They won't stop coming." Cross met his gaze. "That's why we don't run. We take the fight to them." Tyler exhaled slowly. He didn't trust Cross, not fully, but he knew one thing: Titan was the key to something bigger. And whatever Blackhawk was trying to hide, it was worth killing for. He crouched low, listening as muffled voices echoed above them. The soldiers were searching, but they hadn't found the tunnel. Not yet. Tyler motioned for Titan to stay close, then nodded at Cross. "Let's move." They disappeared into the darkness, knowing that the real fight had only just begun. Tyler moved quickly through the narrow tunnel, his flashlight casting eerie shadows against the damp, crumbling walls. The air was thick, filled with the scent of rust and old decay. Cross led the way, his pace steady, his movements confident, as if he had been through these tunnels before. Titan stayed close to Tyler's side, his ears perked, his body tense, his instincts sharp. Every few steps, the dog would stop, listening, sensing something beyond what Tyler or Cross could hear. Behind them, the muffled sounds of Blackhawk soldiers echoed through the earth above. They were searching, spreading out, getting closer. Tyler clenched his jaw, gripping his gun tighter. "How much farther?" he whispered. Cross didn't look back. "Not far. There's an exit near an old maintenance yard. If we make it there, we can blend in, disappear." Tyler wasn't convinced. Blackhawk wasn't the type to give up easily. They had resources, they had reach, and they had already proven they weren't afraid to kill to cover their tracks. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to crouch as they pressed forward. Water dripped from the ceiling, the sound unnervingly loud in the silence. Then Titan suddenly stopped. His body went rigid, his nose flared, and a deep, low growl rumbled from his throat. Tyler froze. He had learned to trust the dog's instincts, and right now, Titan was telling him something was wrong. Cross noticed it too. "What is it?" he whispered. Tyler didn't answer. He turned off his flashlight, plunging them into darkness, listening. At first, there was nothing but the distant sound of dripping water. Then, faintly, from up ahead, the soft crunch of boots against gravel. Tyler's stomach twisted. They weren't alone. Cross muttered a curse under his breath, reaching for his weapon. Tyler motioned for him to stay quiet. Moving slowly, carefully, he pressed against the damp tunnel wall, his pulse steady but his senses on high alert. Titan's growl faded, but his ears remained perked, his body low, ready to strike. A shadow flickered ahead, someone was standing at the next turn, waiting. A trap. Tyler exhaled slowly, adjusting his grip on the gun. They had two choices: walk straight into an ambush or take the fight to them first. Cross met his gaze, nodding slightly. No words are needed. They both understood what needed to be done. Tyler took a slow breath, then in one swift motion, he pushed forward. Gun raised. The tunnel erupted in gunfire. Gunfire exploded in the narrow tunnel, the sharp cracks of bullets ricocheting off the damp stone walls. Tyler moved fast, dropping low as a burst of rounds zipped past his head, kicking up dust and debris. Cross returned fire, his shots precise and controlled, forcing their attackers to take cover behind rusted support beams. Titan lunged forward, his powerful form disappearing into the darkness ahead, moving like a shadow. A strangled yell followed, a soldier caught off guard as Titan slammed into him, bringing him down hard. Tyler seized the opening, firing twice, taking out another target. The dim tunnel flickered with muzzle flashes. The air thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder. Footsteps pounded toward them from deeper in the tunnel, reinforcements closing in. "Move!" Cross barked, shoving Tyler toward a rusted ladder bolted to the wall. Tyler didn't hesitate, gripping the cold metal and hauling himself up. Titan leaped effortlessly onto the lower rungs, climbing with practiced ease. Cross fired one last shot before following, his boots slamming against the metal as he ascended. Below, the remaining Blackhawk operatives regrouped, shouting orders, their voices echoing through the tunnel. Tyler reached the top first, shoving open a heavy metal hatch. A rush of cold air hit his face as he pulled himself onto the surface, finding himself in the middle of an abandoned industrial yard, surrounded by decaying warehouses and rusting machinery. Cross and Titan climbed out just as more gunfire erupted from below. Tyler slammed the hatch shut, grabbing a rusted chain nearby and wrapping it through the latch, buying them precious seconds. Panting, he scanned the yard. No sign of more Blackhawk units yet, but it wouldn't be long. Titan stood alert, ears twitching, scanning the area with the same precision as a trained soldier. Cross exhaled sharply, reloading his weapon. "They won't stop, Grayson. We need to disappear, now." Tyler wiped the sweat from his brow, adrenaline still surging through his veins. He knew Cross was right. They had shaken Blackhawk for the moment, but the hunt wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Tyler looked down at Titan, whose golden brown eyes were locked on him, waiting for the next move. He had seen that look before, in soldiers who knew the war wasn't finished. Tyler took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. "Then let's finish this before they do." Without another word, he turned and ran toward the shadows of the abandoned city, Titan and Cross right behind him, disappearing into the night. Tyler moved quickly through the abandoned industrial yard, his boots crunching against broken concrete, his pulse steady but his mind racing. Cross kept pace beside him, scanning the dark alleyways between rusted warehouses, his gun still gripped tightly. Titan moved ahead, silent, his powerful form gliding through the shadows, ears alert for any sign of pursuit. The air was thick with the scent of oil and decay, the distant hum of the city a stark contrast to the eerie silence around them. They had only bought themselves a few minutes at best. Blackhawk wouldn't stop. Tyler knew that much. They were trained to track, to hunt, and they would be coming. Fast. Cross suddenly stopped, raising a fist in a silent signal. Tyler froze. Titan, just ahead, halted mid-step, his muscles tensed. A sound. Faint, but unmistakable. The distant roar of an approaching vehicle. Tyler turned sharply, eyes locking onto a side passage between two warehouses. "There," he muttered. Cross didn't question him. They sprinted, slipping between the crumbling buildings just as headlights swept across the yard behind them. The rumble of engines grew louder. Tyler crouched behind an old shipping container, peering through a gap. 3 SUVs rolled into the yard, their blacked-out windows glinting under the flickering streetlights. Doors swung open in unison, and figures in tactical gear stepped out. Their movements methodical, precise. Tyler clenched his jaw. This wasn't just a recovery team. This was a kill squad. They weren't here to capture. They were here to eliminate. Titan let out a slow, low growl, barely audible but enough to send a shiver down Tyler's spine. Cross shifted beside him, checking his ammo. "We're outnumbered," he murmured. Tyler exhaled. "Yeah. But they don't know where we are." "Not yet." Cross glanced at him. "So what's the plan?" Tyler studied the scene, his mind working fast. They couldn't outrun them. They had to outthink them. His gaze flicked toward a set of rusted fuel tanks near the far end of the yard, then toward the stack of crates near the loading dock. A distraction. A trap. A way out. He turned to Cross. "We split up. You draw them toward the warehouse. I'll take Titan and flank them from the other side." Cross smirked. "Risky," Tyler smirked back. "Yeah. But so is dying." Cross gave a nod, then slipped into the shadows. Tyler took a deep breath, locking eyes with Titan. "You ready for this, buddy?" Titan didn't hesitate. He crouched low, ears pricked forward, waiting for the signal. Tyler gripped his gun tighter and steadied his breathing. The hunt was about to begin, only this time, they were the hunters. Tyler moved swiftly through the darkness, his footsteps silent against the cracked pavement as he guided Titan along the edge of the warehouse. The distant murmur of voices and the occasional click of a rifle being adjusted told him exactly where Blackhawk's team was positioned. He kept his breathing steady, his grip firm on his pistol, his mind calculating every possible outcome. Across the yard, Cross was already making his move, slipping between shadows, drawing the attention of the operatives. Tyler watched as one of the gunmen gestured to the others, signaling a sweep of the area. They were moving cautiously, methodically, too well trained to be careless, but too focused on tracking to realize they were the ones being hunted. Tyler's gaze shifted to the rusted fuel tanks near the loading dock. A perfect trap. He motioned to Titan, giving a silent command. The dog instantly understood, his body lowering into a stealthy prowl as he moved toward the far side of the yard. Tyler waited until Titan was in position, then took a slow breath and raised his gun. One clean shot. That was all he needed. He aimed at the base of one of the fuel tanks and pulled the trigger. The bullet struck metal with a sharp ping, sparks flying. A split second later, flames ignited as fuel began to leak, catching fire instantly. The explosion was small but loud enough to send the Blackhawk operatives into a moment of confusion. Tyler used the distraction. Moving fast, weaving between crates and wrecked machinery, staying low as the gunmen turned their attention to the burning tank. Titan took the cue, darting forward, a blur of muscle and precision as he launched himself at the nearest operative, taking him down with brutal efficiency. A strangled cry rang out as the man crumpled, his weapon clattering to the ground. Tyler didn't stop. He fired twice, taking out another target before slipping behind cover again. Cross joined the attack from the other side, his rifle cracking through the night, forcing the remaining operatives to scramble for cover. Chaos erupted in the yard. Blackhawk was trained, but they hadn't expected an ambush. Tyler moved with precision, his heart hammering but his mind sharp. He and Titan worked as a single unit, attacking, disappearing, and striking again. Another operative fell, then another. The numbers were shifting in their favor. But then, a new sound. The low, unmistakable thump of a helicopter approaching. Tyler's blood ran cold. Reinforcements. They had minutes, maybe less. He glanced at Titan, who was already watching the sky, his body tensed, sensing the shift in the fight. Tyler turned toward Cross, who was reloading behind a stack of crates. "We need to end this. Now." Cross nodded, eyes flicking toward the last few gunmen regrouping near the SUVs. Tyler took a deep breath, adrenaline surging through his veins. One last push, one final strike. It was all or nothing. The distant thump of the helicopter grew louder, the wind from its rotors kicking up dust and debris as it neared the industrial yard. Tyler's instincts screamed that they were running out of time. The remaining Blackhawk operatives were regrouping near the SUVs, their radios crackling as they coordinated, trying to recover from the ambush. Tyler knew exactly what was coming next: reinforcements, heavier firepower, and no chance of escaping if they didn't move fast. He turned to Titan, who was already locked onto their next target, his muscles coiled like a spring ready to launch. Tyler gave a quick signal, and in an instant, Titan bolted. The German Shepherd moved like a ghost through the chaos, dodging between covers before closing in on one of the operatives trying to radio for backup. The man barely had time to react before Titan slammed into him, teeth sinking into his forearm, yanking him down hard. The radio flew from his grasp, skidding across the pavement. Tyler seized the moment, emerging from cover and firing twice, taking down another gunman who had been aiming at Titan. Cross was already moving, his rifle barking as he covered Tyler's flank, keeping the others pinned. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning fuel. The helicopter's spotlight cut through the darkness, sweeping over the yard as a voice crackled through a loudspeaker. "Grayson, surrender now. And we might let you live." Tyler exhaled sharply. That wasn't a bluff. Blackhawk didn't take prisoners. Cross ducked behind cover, reloading. "We're out of time, Grayson. You got a plan?" Tyler's mind raced. They couldn't win this fight head-on. The only option was to make a move they wouldn't expect. His eyes locked onto the remaining SUVs, their way out. He turned to Cross. "We take a truck." Cross gave him a sharp look. "You serious?" Tyler smirked. Unless you wanna stay here and get shredded by minigun fire. Cross cursed but didn't argue. Tyler whistled sharply. Titan broke off from his target and sprinted back to him without hesitation. The dog's fur was streaked with dust and sweat, but his focus was razor sharp. Tyler moved first, sprinting low toward one of the SUVs, its engine still running. Bullets slammed into the ground behind him as Blackhawk fired, realizing their escape plan. Titan darted alongside him, weaving through the chaos. Cross provided cover fire, taking down one more operative before diving into the passenger seat just as Tyler yanked open the driver's door and jumped in. Titan leaped into the back, his paws barely touching the seat before Tyler slammed the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement as the SUV fishtailed, bullets sparking off the frame. The helicopter swung around, its spotlight locking onto them. Tyler gritted his teeth, shoving the pedal to the floor. Hold on. The vehicle lurched forward, tearing out of the yard just as a burst of gunfire from the helicopter shredded the ground where they had been seconds ago. The chase was on. And Tyler wasn't planning on stopping. Tyler gripped the steering wheel tight as the SUV roared down the cracked highway, the helicopter's spotlight blazing through the night, chasing them like a predator. The sound of rotor blades thundered overhead, and another burst of gunfire shredded the pavement just behind their tires. Titan crouched in the back seat, his ears flattened, his body tense, sensing the danger. Cross leaned out of the passenger window, rifle raised, aiming the chopper, but the angle was bad, and the armored plating around the cockpit made it nearly impossible to take down with small arms. Tyler clenched his jaw, eyes scanning the road ahead. They needed an escape, but out here, in the open, there was nowhere to run. Another burst of gunfire ripped through the rear windshield, glass exploding into the cabin. Tyler swerved hard, barely avoiding an incoming missile that detonated against the roadside, sending flames and debris into the air. They're trying to box us in. Cross shouted, ducking back inside. Tyler growled in frustration, pushing the SUV harder. Ahead, the road split, one path leading toward a bridge, the other toward an abandoned quarry. His mind worked fast. The bridge was a trap. They'd have snipers waiting. But the quarry. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. A steep drop, unstable terrain, exactly what they wouldn't expect. He made his choice. Hold on. Tyler shouted as he yanked the wheel left, sending the SUV off the main road and toward the rugged dirt path leading down into the quarry. The tires skidded over loose gravel, kicking up dust as the vehicle plunged downward at an angle that felt almost suicidal. The helicopter hesitated, adjusting course, unable to follow so easily in the narrow space. Tyler gritted his teeth, wrestling with the wheel as the SUV bounced violently over uneven ground, nearly flipping with each sharp turn. Titan braced himself instinctively, his claws digging into the seat. Cross cursed loudly. Tell me you have an actual plan here. Yeah, Tyler growled, eyes locked on a rusted old mining platform up ahead. We're gonna make them think we crashed. He slammed the brakes at the last second, sending the SUV into a controlled skid just before reaching the edge of a steep drop-off. Dust and debris exploded into the air as the vehicle spun out, coming to a stop just inches from the ledge. Then, in one swift motion, Tyler killed the engine and threw open the door. Out. Now. Cross didn't argue. They moved fast, Titan leaping out behind them as they sprinted toward the shadows beneath the wrecked platform. Above, the helicopter hovered uncertainly, its spotlight sweeping over the wreckage, looking for movement. Tyler held his breath, pressing himself flat against the steel beams. The wind from the rotors kicked up dust, making it hard to see, but then, the searchlight moved on. The pilot must have assumed they had gone over the edge. A few more tense seconds passed before the helicopter finally veered away, disappearing into the night. Tyler exhaled, his heart still pounding. Cross ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. You're insane. Tyler smirked. Yeah. But we're still alive. Titan let out a soft huff, settling beside them, his golden brown eyes locked onto Tyler, as if waiting for what came next. Tyler looked out at the distant city lights in the valley below. Blackhawk thought they were dead. That gave them an advantage. And Tyler planned to use it. Tyler crouched behind the rusted beams of the abandoned mining platform, his breath steadying as the distant hum of the helicopter faded into the night. Titan sat beside him, his ears twitching at every small sound, still alert despite the temporary quiet. Cross wiped the sweat from his brow, exhaling sharply as he leaned against a stack of collapsed metal supports. "All right, Grayson, we lost them. Now what?" Tyler didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the distant city lights below, his mind racing. Blackhawk wasn't going to stop. The ambush at the warehouse, the kill squad, the helicopter, they weren't just trying to recover Titan. They were trying to erase him. That meant whatever Titan knew, whatever was buried in his lost memories, was dangerous enough for Blackhawk to send a full force after them. Tyler looked at the dog, his golden brown eyes still sharp, still focused. "We need answers," Tyler finally said. "And I think I know where to start." Cross gave him a skeptical look. "You're talking about Mason, aren't you?" Tyler nodded. Dr. Mason Reed, a former military veterinarian, specialized in K9 rehabilitation for combat dogs with PTSD. If anyone could help unlock whatever was buried in Titan's mind, it was him. Cross ran a hand through his hair, clearly thinking. "That guy disappeared off the grid years ago. You really think you can find him?" Tyler smirked slightly. "I already did. I just never had a reason to look for him until now." Cross sighed, clearly realizing he had no better option. "Fine. But we move carefully. Blackhawk's gonna double down after this mess." Tyler turned to Titan, kneeling so he was at eye level with the dog. "You ready for this, buddy?" Titan stared at him for a long moment, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. Not an instinctive movement, not a fluke, a decision. Tyler felt a strange sense of understanding pass between them. Titan wasn't just following orders. He wanted to finish this. Tyler stood up, rolling his shoulders. "All right then. We head south at first light." He glanced at Cross. "Mason's got a safe house in the desert. We get there, we get answers." Cross gave a dry chuckle. "You make it sound easy." Tyler's smirk was humorless. "Nothing about this is easy." He turned toward the shadows, Titan falling into step beside him. The road ahead was uncertain, and Blackhawk would be coming for them soon. But for the first time since this started, Tyler wasn't running. He was hunting. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Tyler drove south, keeping the SUV at a steady but cautious speed. The roads were empty, the silence stretching between him, Cross, and Titan. The weight of the past few hours hung heavy, but there was no time to dwell on it. Blackhawk would regroup. They always did. And the moment they realized Tyler and Titan weren't dead, they'd come even harder. Tyler glanced in the rearview mirror at Titan, who sat calmly in the back seat, his golden brown eyes scanning the landscape. The dog was never truly at ease. Always watching, always listening. Tyler had seen that look before, in soldiers who had seen too much, who had survived things that should have killed them. Cross shifted in the passenger seat, rubbing a sore spot on his shoulder where he had slammed into the dashboard during their escape. "This Mason guy," he muttered, breaking the silence. "What makes you so sure he's still around?" Tyler kept his eyes on the road. "Mason doesn't just disappear. He goes underground." "Big difference." Cross snorted. "And what exactly does he know?" Tyler exhaled, gripping the wheel tighter. "If Titan has pieces of his memory locked away, Mason's the only one who can pull them out. He worked with military K9 units for over a decade. He knows how to break through the trauma, how to bring back what's been buried." Cross shook his head. "Yeah, well, let's just hope what Titan remembers doesn't get us all killed." The highway stretched endlessly ahead, the desert heat beginning to rise. Titan let out a low huff, shifting slightly, but his gaze never wavered from the window. He wasn't just a passenger in all of this. He was part of it. Whatever truth lay hidden in his past, whatever Blackhawk was so desperate to erase, it was inside him, waiting to surface. Tyler glanced at the dog again, his gut tightening with something close to certainty. They weren't just running toward Mason. They were running toward the truth. And the truth was coming for them whether they were ready or not. The sun was beginning to set as Tyler drove down a deserted dirt road, dust kicking up behind the SUV as they neared Mason's safe house. The old ranch sat in the middle of nowhere, hidden by dry, rocky hills and surrounded by nothing but silence. It looked abandoned, weathered wooden walls, a sagging front porch, a few rusted-out vehicles scattered around, but Tyler knew better. Mason never left anything unprotected. As they pulled up, Titan sat up in the back seat, ears perked, his sharp eyes locked on the house. He sensed something, but he didn't growl. That was a good sign. Cross shifted in the passenger seat, watching the place warily. "Looks like a dump," he muttered. Tyler didn't respond. He killed the engine and stepped out, Titan immediately following, his paws barely making a sound as he scanned the area. Tyler approached the front porch, keeping his hands visible. "Mason. It's Grayson. Open up." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a metallic click sounded from above. Tyler didn't have to look to know there was a rifle pointed at his head. A gruff voice came from the shadows of the porch. "Turn around." Slowly. Tyler exhaled and did as he was told, looking up to see Dr. Mason Reed standing just inside the doorway, shotgun aimed directly at him. He looked older, rougher than Tyler remembered, gray stubble, sunburned skin, and tired eyes that had seen too much. "You weren't followed?" Mason asked, his voice low, distrustful. "No," Tyler said firmly. "We made sure of it." Mason's sharp gaze flicked to Titan, and for the first time, his expression changed. "That's him, isn't it?" Tyler nodded. "We need your help. He's starting to remember things Blackhawk doesn't want him to." Mason lowered the shotgun slightly but didn't relax. "If that's true, you just brought a whole lot of trouble to my doorstep," Mason said, his voice tight. He lowered the shotgun, eyes flickering with something haunted. "I walked away from Blackhawk years ago, Grayson. Worked on their K9s, too close to places like Krieger. Saw things I couldn't stomach. That's why I'm here, hiding," Cross scoffed. "Yeah, we kinda figured that out when they tried to kill us." Mason's eyes lingered on Titan for a long moment before he finally sighed and stepped back. "Fine. Get inside. And pray to God you didn't just sign all our death warrants." Tyler exchanged a glance with Titan, then followed Mason inside, knowing that whatever answers they were about to uncover wouldn't come without a price. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood and gun oil. The place was cluttered but organized, maps pinned to the walls, stacks of old military files, and shelves filled with supplies that suggested Mason had been living off the grid for a long time. Titan padded silently across the wooden floor, his nose twitching as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Mason locked the door behind them, pulling down the heavy steel bar that reinforced it. "If Blackhawk's after him, they'll find this place eventually," Mason muttered, moving toward an old desk covered in papers. Tyler crossed his arms. "That's why we don't have time to waste. He's remembering things. I need you to help him remember more." Mason exhaled, rubbing his jaw as he studied Titan. "Memories don't just come back because you want them to. If they're buried, it's for a reason." Tyler wasn't convinced. "They tried to kill us just to stop him from remembering. Whatever's in his head, it's big." Mason nodded grimly, then knelt, meeting Titan's gaze. The dog remained still, watching him carefully. "I worked with K9s long enough to know when they're holding something back," Mason murmured. He reached out slowly, but Titan didn't flinch. That was another sign. He knew Mason wasn't a threat. Mason sat back on his heels. "All right. We do this my way. No forcing. No pressure. If he remembers something, it's because he's ready." Tyler nodded. Mason stood and grabbed a small black device from a nearby shelf, tossing it to Tyler. "Put that on the table." Tyler looked at it, a military-grade earpiece. The kind handlers used to give commands during special ops missions. Mason then pulled a small case from under the desk and opened it, revealing a patch with an embedded microchip. He moved toward Titan slowly, then placed the patch gently near the base of the dog's neck. Titan stiffened slightly but didn't react aggressively. "Blackhawk messed with their heads," Mason said, voice grim. "Some of these K9s were wired for thought-to-signal tech at places like Krieger, experiments to make them more than just dogs. This device reads those old neural pathways, turns buried memories into something we can hear. That's a neural stimulator," Mason explained. It was developed to help retired K9s reconnect with lost memories from trauma. It won't force anything, but if there's something in there, it might trigger it. Tyler felt his chest tighten as he watched Titan, waiting. Mason turned on the device, and a low humming sound filled the room. Titan's ears twitched, his body going still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, his breathing changed. His pupils dilated. His muscles tensed. Suddenly, he let out a deep, sharp growl, not at them, but at something that wasn't there. His head snapped toward the empty corner of the room, his body dropping into a defensive stance. Tyler recognized it immediately. Titan was reacting to something he was seeing, something from his past. Then, Titan let out a sound Tyler had never heard from him before, a low, broken whimper. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was recognition. Mason's expression darkened. He's seeing something. Titan took a slow step forward, his tail stiff, his breathing sharp. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Tyler said the one thing he'd been afraid to ask, "What are you remembering, buddy?" Titan turned to him, eyes locked on his. And for the first time, he looked afraid. Titan stood frozen, his golden brown eyes locked onto Tyler's, wide with something close to fear. His body remained tense, his ears flicking as if listening to something distant, something only he could hear. The low hum of the neural stimulator continued to pulse in the background, and for a long, heavy moment, the room was silent except for the sound of Titan's controlled but uneven breathing. Then, suddenly, he moved. It wasn't a panicked reaction, nor was it aggression. It was something worse. It was instinct. Titan pivoted sharply, his head snapping toward the door, muscles coiling, his posture shifting into full alert as if expecting an attack. Mason, still kneeling beside him, slowly raised his hands. "Easy, boy. You're safe," he murmured, but Titan wasn't hearing him anymore. He wasn't in this room. He was somewhere else, somewhere buried deep in his memories. Tyler could see it in his eyes. He had seen that look before, in soldiers who had lived through hell and come out on the other side still trapped in it. "Titan," Tyler said carefully, his voice firm but steady, stepping forward. The dog's head jerked toward him at the sound of his name, but his breathing remained sharp, nostrils flaring as if he was catching the scent of something that wasn't really there. Then, without warning, a single, sharp bark broke from his throat, a sound so precise, so perfectly timed that it sent a chill through Tyler's spine. Mason cursed under his breath. "That was a tactical alert bark," he muttered. "He's responding to something. Something real." Cross took a cautious step forward. What the hell does he see? Titan's entire body tensed, his tail lowering slightly, and then, his head snapped toward the farthest wall of the room. His lips curled back just slightly, a low rumble vibrating from his chest. But there was nothing there. Nothing but old wooden panels and dust-covered shelves. Tyler swallowed hard. He's not looking at the wall, he realized, voice barely above a whisper. He's looking through it. Mason stood slowly, eyes narrowing. He's remembering a place. A location. Something buried deep. He turned to Tyler, his face grim. Whatever Blackhawk tried to erase, it's still in there. Then Titan took a step forward. His entire body stiff, his eyes locked on the invisible memory. The neural stimulator pulsed louder, and a faint whirring sound filled the air. Suddenly, a distorted, synthetic voice crackled from the earpiece on the table, not Titan's, but a cold, mechanical echo of his thoughts. "Krieger." The word hung heavy, ripped from somewhere deep in his mind, amplified by the device Mason had rigged, a remnant of Blackhawk's experiments. Tyler's heart slammed against his ribs. Cross went stiff. Mason paled. The name wasn't just random. It was classified. It was a ghost. And it meant they were already running out of time. The room fell into a heavy silence, the only sound the steady hum of the neural stimulator and Titan's slow, controlled breathing. Tyler's pulse hammered in his ears as the name hung in the air like a warning. Krieger. He didn't know what it meant yet, but the way Mason paled and Cross stiffened told him it was bad. Real bad. Titan remained still, his golden brown eyes locked on the invisible memory in front of him, his body tense but not fearful. He knew that name. He had been there, wherever Krieger was. And Blackhawk had done everything in their power to make sure he forgot. Mason stepped back slowly, rubbing his face, his expression grim. "Krieger isn't a person," Mason muttered, his face paling. "It's a black site. I never got inside, but I heard the rumors, dogs disappearing, experiments going wrong. I quit before they could drag me into it," he muttered. "It's a location." Tyler's stomach clenched. "Where?" Mason shook his head. "That's the problem. Krieger is off the books. It's a black site. No records, no leaks. It doesn't exist." Cross swore under his breath. "It exists," he muttered. "And Titan was there." Mason exhaled sharply, glancing at the dog, who still hadn't moved, still locked in whatever memory had surfaced. If Blackhawk wiped him, it means whatever happened at Krieger was too dangerous to let live. Tyler's gut twisted. He had been in the military long enough to know what that meant. Krieger wasn't just some abandoned facility. It was something buried, something no one was supposed to find. And Titan was the last remaining link to it. His fists clenched. "If Titan remembers, then we need to find it before they do." Mason hesitated, eyes flicking toward Cross. Tyler caught the movement and immediately felt the tension shift. Something was off. Cross hadn't spoken in the last few seconds, his face unreadable, his jaw tight. A gut feeling, one Tyler had learned to trust, sent a chill down his spine. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to Cross. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked, voice low. Cross didn't answer. Titan did. A sharp, sudden growl ripped from the dog's throat as he turned on Cross, his body lowering, ears pinned back, teeth bared. A warning. A challenge. Tyler felt the weight of the moment settles over them. He wasn't the only one who had been hunting for the truth. Blackhawk had a mole. And he had just led them straight to Mason. Tyler's fingers curled around his pistol, his breath steady despite the sharp tension pressing down on the room. Titan remained locked onto Cross, his growl deep, primal, vibrating in the space between them. Cross didn't move, but Tyler could see it in his eyes, the calculation, the weight of a decision already made. Mason stayed silent, his gaze shifting between them, piecing it together just as fast. Tyler took a step closer, voice low but unwavering. "How long?" Cross exhaled slowly, but he didn't lie. "Since the beginning." Tyler's grip tightened, but he didn't pull the trigger. "Not yet. You sold us out." Cross tilted his head slightly. "It's not that simple." Titan's growl sharpened. His body coiled like a spring. He knew betrayal when he saw it. Tyler's jaw clenched. "You led us here. To Mason. To Titan's memories. You've been working for them this whole time." Cross didn't deny it. His shoulders stayed loose, relaxed, but not in surrender. He was waiting. Tyler knew the look. A trained soldier weighing his exit strategy. Mason's voice cut through the silence, calm but edged with steel. "How long until they get here?" Cross finally looked away, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "They're already here." The words had barely left his lips when the first explosion hit. The blast tore through the front of the house, shattering windows, splintering wood, and throwing debris into the air. Tyler hit the ground hard, the impact rattling his skull as dust and smoke flooded the room. Titan yelped but recovered instantly, springing to his feet, instincts kicking in. Mason scrambled for cover, coughing as he grabbed a rifle from under the desk. Tyler rolled onto his side, ears ringing, vision blurred. Through the haze, he saw Cross already moving. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He simply turned and walked through the chaos like he had planned it all along. Tyler lifted his gun, his vision sharpening. Rage burning through him. He had the shot. He could end it right now. But before he could pull the trigger, gunfire erupted outside. Blackhawk was here. And they weren't coming to take prisoners. Mason cursed, ducking behind an overturned table. "We have to move." Tyler hesitated only for a second before making his choice. He turned to Titan, locking eyes. "We end this." Titan gave the barest nod before spinning toward the broken door, already sprinting into the smoke. Tyler followed, his heart hammering as he stepped into the firestorm. The final fight had begun. Gunfire ripped through the night, tearing into the walls of the safe house as Tyler ducked low, his pistol gripped tightly in his hand. The air was thick with smoke and dust, the scent of burning wood mixing with the metallic tang of blood. Titan moved like a ghost through the chaos, his body low, his muscles coiled, eyes locked on the shadows shifting beyond the wreckage. Blackhawk soldiers were everywhere, their tactical gear blending into the darkness as they spread out, securing the perimeter. Tyler's instincts screamed that they were outnumbered, but running wasn't an option. Not this time. Mason crouched behind an overturned cabinet, reloading his rifle, his face grim. "They're pushing in from the south side. We won't hold them for long." Tyler wiped sweat and dirt from his brow, his mind racing. He wasn't thinking about escaping. He was thinking about Cross. Somewhere in the chaos, Cross was slipping away. He had led them here, betrayed them, and now he was vanishing into the night, leaving them to die. But Tyler wasn't about to let that happen. "Cover me," he barked at Mason before sprinting toward the destroyed doorway. Bullets zipped past him, kicking up dirt and debris, but he didn't stop. Titan was already ahead, weaving through the battlefield, his instincts razor-sharp. Blackhawk soldiers tried to track them, but they were too fast, too unpredictable. Tyler dropped low behind a rusted-out truck just as Titan lunged at the nearest operative, taking him down with brutal efficiency. The man barely had time to scream before Titan's teeth sank into his arm, ripping him away from his weapon. Tyler didn't hesitate. He fired 2 shots, clean and precise, dropping another soldier who had just turned to aim. Mason laid down cover fire from the house, his rifle barking in rapid bursts. "We need to fall back," he shouted. But Tyler wasn't listening. His focus was locked on a lone figure moving toward the tree line, Cross. He was disappearing into the dark, moving fast, escaping before the fight reached its peak. Tyler's chest burned with fury. No. Not this time. He shoved forward, Titan falling into step beside him. Blackhawk had come to erase Titan's memories, to silence them forever. But Tyler wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was going to finish this. Once and for all. The war had finally come to them, and Tyler was ready to fight. As another explosion rocked the ground behind him, he sprinted after Cross, into the night, into the unknown, with Titan at his side, ready to end it. Tyler sprinted through the trees, his breath controlled despite the adrenaline pounding through his veins. Cross was just ahead, moving fast, his silhouette barely visible against the dark forest. The distant echoes of gunfire and explosions from the safe house faded behind them, but Tyler wasn't stopping. Not until this ended. Titan ran beside him, his paws silent against the dirt, his golden eyes locked onto the fleeing traitor. The dog wasn't just chasing, he was hunting. Cross reached the edge of a clearing where a sleek black SUV was parked, engine running. He wasn't escaping alone. 2 Blackhawk operatives flanked him, rifles raised, scanning for threats. Tyler didn't hesitate. He fired twice, one shot hitting a soldier in the chest, the other slamming into the SUV's windshield. The glass spiderwebbed, forcing the driver to duck. Cross spun, eyes flashing with recognition, but he didn't look surprised. He had expected Tyler to come after him. Maybe he even wanted it. Titan lunged first. The second soldier barely had time to react before the dog's powerful body collided with him, teeth snapping onto his forearm, dragging him to the ground. The man screamed, his rifle clattering into the dirt. Cross didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his own gun, aiming directly at Tyler. Tyler dropped into a roll just as the shot rang out, the bullet tearing past his shoulder. He came up fast, leveling his own pistol, but Cross was already moving, diving behind the SUV for cover. Titan dispatched the second soldier with brutal efficiency, his growl low and dangerous, then turned his focus on Cross. Tyler moved in, pressing forward as Cross fired again, the bullet grazing past his ribs. The pain barely registered. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about finishing what Cross started. Cross darted around the vehicle, trying to break away, but Titan was faster. The dog cut him off, circling with slow, predatory steps. Cross exhaled sharply, his fingers tightening on his weapon. "You don't get it, Grayson," he muttered, breathing heavily. "Blackhawk isn't just a company. It's bigger than us. Bigger than Titan. You can't stop them." Tyler wiped blood from his lip, eyes cold. I don't need to stop them. His gaze flicked to Titan. I just need to stop you. Cross made his move. He fired, but Tyler was faster. One shot. Center mass. The bullet hit home. Cross staggered. His body locking up as the pain registered, his gun slipping from his fingers. He dropped to his knees, clutching his chest, his breath ragged. He let out a soft, bitter chuckle, shaking his head. Guess I should have seen that coming, Cross rasped, coughing blood. His eyes softened for a split second, meeting Tyler's. Tell her I tried. He slumped forward, the weight of his choices dragging him into the dirt. Tyler stepped closer, gun still raised, watching as Cross's strength faded. Titan stood beside him, his breath slow, deep, his body still coiled, ready to finish it if Tyler gave the command. But there was no need. Cross shuddered once, his body swaying, then he collapsed, the forest fell silent. Tyler exhaled, his grip loosening slightly, his heart still hammering. It was over. Titan stood beside him, steady, unwavering. His golden brown eyes met Tyler's, and in that moment, Tyler knew, Titan remembered everything. And now, so did Blackhawk. The forest was still, the distant echoes of gunfire long gone, replaced by the quiet rustling of the wind through the trees. Cross lay motionless on the ground, his breath shallow, his body slumped against the dirt. The glow of the SUV's headlights cast eerie shadows across the clearing, flickering against the blood staining his chest. Tyler stood over him, his gun still raised, but the fight was already over. Titan remained at his side, his muscles tense, his breathing steady, but there was no more growling, no more aggression, only watchfulness. The job was done. Cross coughed, his voice rough and weak. You think this ends with me? He muttered, forcing a bitter smirk despite the pain. You don't stop Blackhawk, Grayson. They don't just disappear. Tyler didn't answer. He just stared, his expression unreadable. He had spent years fighting wars for people he didn't trust, taking orders from men who saw him as nothing more than a tool. Cross had made his choice, just like Tyler had made his. And in the end, choices had consequences. The distant roar of approaching sirens pulled Tyler's attention back to reality. Mason must have called for backup, or maybe Blackhawk had finally realized they had lost control. Either way, they had to move. He holstered his weapon and turned to Titan, giving him a sharp nod. Without hesitation, the dog turned and sprinted toward the SUV, ready. Cross let out a weak chuckle, shaking his head. He was never broken, you know. You didn't fix him. His eyes flickered toward Titan, who was watching him from a distance, his golden brown gaze calm, unshaken. They tried to erase him, but you can't erase something that refuses to be forgotten. Cross exhaled sharply, his strength failing. Tyler didn't say another word. He just turned away, climbing into the SUV as Titan leaped into the back. The tires spun against the dirt as Tyler floored the gas, the vehicle tearing away from the clearing, leaving Cross behind. The past was done. Now it was time to finish what they started. Blackhawk would come for them. Tyler knew that. But Titan was no longer a ghost of a forgotten war. He was a soldier. A survivor. A reckoning. And together, they weren't running anymore. They were coming back to fight. The road stretched endlessly ahead, bathed in the soft glow of dawn as Tyler drove with one hand on the wheel, his mind still processing everything that had happened. The dust from the tires settled behind them, erasing their tracks, but he knew the past wasn't that easy to leave behind. Titan lay in the back seat, his body relaxed but his eyes still sharp, watching the horizon as if expecting another battle. He wasn't the same dog Tyler had pulled from that forgotten kennel. He wasn't broken. He wasn't lost. He had found himself again. Mason sat in the passenger seat, his face lined with exhaustion, but there was a strange sense of relief in his expression. So, what now? He asked. His voice rough from the long night. Tyler didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Titan in the mirror, the dog's steady presence grounding him in a way nothing else ever had. Blackhawk wasn't gone. They would regroup, rebuild, and come after them again. But this time, Tyler wasn't waiting for them to strike first. This time, he had a plan. We go after them, Tyler finally said, his voice steady, certain. Mason let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. That's not an easy fight, Grayson, Tyler smirked slightly. Good. I'm tired of easy fights. Titan let out a soft huff as if agreeing, his ears twitching at the sound of Tyler's voice. Mason exhaled, rubbing his forehead. And after that? Tyler kept his gaze on the road. After that, we find the others. Mason frowned. Others? Tyler nodded. Blackhawk didn't just try to erase Titan. There are more out there. Dogs like him. Soldiers they threw away. And if Blackhawk wanted them gone, that means they were valuable. His grip tightened on the wheel. We find them. We give them a choice. Same as Titan got. Mason studied him for a long moment, then sighed, shaking his head. You're insane. Tyler smirked. Yeah. But so is thinking you can just erase something like this and expect no one to fight back. Titan lifted his head slightly, his gaze meeting Tyler's in the mirror. There was no hesitation in those golden brown eyes, no doubt, no fear. Just purpose. As the sun rose behind them, casting long shadows across the empty highway, Tyler pressed down on the gas. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning.